I'm going to talk to you about how empathy is exhausting if you stop there. The thing about empathy and compassion is this. You need empathy in order to develop a sense of compassion and self-compassion. Without it, you can't get there. And at the same time, if you stop at your empathic development, you will actually be exhausted. There is research that Tanya Singer has done that's been replicated more than once. And one of the findings is that empathy is exhausting. She took Buddhist monks that are very well practiced in mindfulness-based meditations and hooked them up to fMRI machines and showed them images of Romanian orphanages to show them something that they could witness that was really tough suffering. And these monks practiced holding a space of empathy without compassion while they viewed these things. And what was found was that there are certain parts of the brain that lit up that are more tied to exhaustion, and they also reported feeling more exhausted after viewing and witnessing those things, only holding on to a space of empathy. When the monks were given permission to access a sense of compassion and even self-compassion for what it felt like to witness something like that, they actually felt energized, and the reward centers of their brains were lighting up. And this was the beginning for Tanya Singer's research of finding that compassion is energizing and empathy is exhausting. A lot of people ask me, and when they hear this research, get curious about, well, what is the difference between empathy and compassion? And it's an important question. There is some overlap, but one of the big differences between empathy and self-compassion is empathy is relating to a certain set of feelings, usually hard feelings is the space that we're talking about it in. And compassion has a lot to do with the attitude that we hold towards something. So compassion is really touching the space of our attitude. Empathy is touching the space of our understanding. And self-compassion has a lot to do with the attitude that we have towards our own thoughts and our own beliefs. I want to tell you a little bit about Tanya Singer's research on self-compassion. She's a really important researcher on this subject because what she's done is she's helped to define self-compassion-based mindfulness in a secular, non-spiritual way. There are a lot of mindfulness practices that are derived from Buddhist psychology, and they're wonderful. And one of the wonderful things about Tanya's research is that it's very clear and it's really very focused on the effectiveness of how we build and grow our mindfulness practices. I think you'll really like it. Tanya Singer explored how it is that we actually develop self-compassion through mindfulness practices. What she did is she took a variety of practices and trained people, everyday people, lay people, in how to develop mindfulness. Her research lasted for 90 days, and the people in her research groups were asked and followed through with practicing about an hour of meditation or mindfulness work a day. About 30 minutes in the morning and 30 minutes in the evening, although some of it was varied. And what she found was that it takes about 90 days to develop a sense of self-compassion, which she has really defined as a change in perspective. What she found and what she focused on for the first 30 days was presence. This meant 2 core practices a day that focused purely on people tracking their breath and their body, and the purpose was to cultivate an attention and introspective awareness and inner awareness towards body sensations and body presence, right? So some of her meditations were just an invitation to notice kind of breath and body, and some was also an invitation to notice kind of physical sensations, but nothing more than that. So that was done for 30 days by people. The second module in her research was exploring affect. So for the second set of 30 days, people were asked to practice a sense of loving kindness. This meant that they were to become aware, now that they were practiced in being aware of breath and body, they were adding awareness to emotions and feelings. This meant teaching loving kindness meditation with the purpose of creating positive and kind of other focused mental states and sort of a pro-social motivation, meaning just accessing emotion with a sense of acceptance and invitation and kindness. In her last 30 days, she was inviting people to begin to practice a sense of perspective. This meant teaching people to observe their thoughts about their emotions and teaching people to identify and detach from some of the contents of their thoughts and to access a sense of a kind attitude towards difficult emotions. Here's what she found that I think is really important. No one could really develop empathy if they didn't have the first 30 days of accessing attention to the body. No one could really develop a sense of compassion if they didn't have 60 days of practice developing a sense of awareness towards the body and towards emotional states. And so what's really important about this is if you stop your growth process around attending to emotions and you don't get to this last piece of compassion development, you're at risk of feeling incredibly exhausted. She defined self-compassion as a change in perspective. And what that really means is that something that feels really hard could still feel really hard, but our perspective towards that hard thing, or a person's perspective towards that hard thing, could begin to change. And when you put all of this together, what you get is an integrated experience with self-compassion. There's a last piece of this research that is also quite important. And what it is that she took these mindfulness practices that we typically do on our own, focused on our own experiences, being in our own mindful process, and she made them relational. That means she put people together in pairs and she invited them to spend about 10 minutes sharing about what they were being mindful of with each other. So in the first module, people just reported about their body scan and their experiences in a very contained way. In her second stage of her research, where she was tracking emotions and affect, where empathy was developing, people shared about hard emotions and difficult experiences. And in the perspective taking part of her research, people were invited to practice listening with an open heart to one another, sharing about something challenging and something hard, and then also something that they felt that they were wanting to acknowledge and celebrate in their world. And the process of adding these relational practices actually sped up the way compassion got developed. I think this matters here because what we're talking about in clinical work is how your own space holding with your clients, your own ease of being with hard affect, hard emotions, or challenging events with an attitude that's compassionate and makes sense is something that can actually help your clients develop this type of self-compassion even more. I'm wondering if you've ever had the experience of feeling really stressed out about something and feeling kind of caught and stuck in your own stress and not being able to get out of it. And then you go and you share about that with a friend or a loved one, and all of a sudden you feel differently. That's really what we're talking about here, the power of relationship to shift perspective. This is a little bit of information to help you understand how empathy gets developed, how compassion gets developed, and how important it is that you move from empathy to self-compassion so that you don't get exhausted in your work. It's also a way to understand and look at if you are feeling exhausted or if you are feeling burned out, that maybe there's a lack of perspective taking or a lack of compassion that you can bring into your work that will make it even easier. Next, I'm going to walk you through an exercise where you will have a chance to explore what it feels like to develop a more compassionate attitude towards something challenging, and also an exercise that helps you celebrate something that feels rewarding, all designed to help nurture your sense of accessing more compassion and more self-compassionate spaces in your work.